Hi, welcome to the third lesson of your inquiry project. In this lesson, we're going to be discussing stage 2 of the inquiry process, which is planning. We're going to go over primary and secondary sources of information, qualitative versus quantitative data. We're going to talk about how you find reliable and valid sources. And last, we're going to go over your research proposal assignment. At this point in your research project, you already have your topic, you have 5 subtopics that you're willing to work with, and you've plugged those all into a final template that you have an idea where you're going with it. So now's where we start to really dig into information and examining and planning for how we're going to find that information. For this project, there is a couple of requirements, and so we're just going to go over some of the background to that right now. So you'll notice in this first handout here, it's titled Inquiry Stage 2. The whole thing that we need to really learn and understand before we move forward is the difference between primary sources of information and secondary sources of information. So there is a document called iProject Terms to Know, and you need to take a peek at that because you really do need to know the differences between primary and secondary sources. For the most part, we use secondary sources when we are researching. So you go to a book and you find information from a book, or you find it from a website or a magazine. Those are where information has already been taken from original sources. It's been gathered and it's been interpreted already by somebody. So if I go and do my own research and write an article and put it on the internet, then it's already been kind of filtered through me and written in the way that I interpreted that. So secondary sources are great, but for this project, you're also required to use primary sources. So this is where you are attaining information from the original source. And there's some different examples of that we can take a look at here. So for example, statistics. When the Canadian government goes and gathers statistical information from census through a census, that generates statistics that's coming firsthand from raw data, what we call raw data. Interviews where you're talking to someone directly, doing a survey. We've had lots of people do really good surveys and doing them with Google Forms and online, and being able to use that to really gather a nice sample to gather information from their surveys. You can do this through diaries, letters, emails, directly from the person or from an expert. Photographs, court records, and memoirs are less likely to be used. But the last one I want to talk about is a little bit on academic research. Academic research is stuff that is generated from universities. So you have experts, academics, scientists, researchers, all working in a field and doing experiments and gathering data on that. Lots of people are really unfamiliar with that, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because there's a lot of academic research that is impossible to read. If you Google cancer, you're going to get a bunch of stuff from the Cancer Association and all of these different things that are readable, that are understandable. If you research cancer on an academic research platform, then you're going to get a bunch of lingo and wording that doesn't necessarily make sense. So I want to quickly demonstrate that for you. So if we go to Google, I'm going to type in cancer. What comes up here? We've got, okay, what is cancer? Cancer.gov. We've got Wikipedia. Wikipedia is always going to come up. Don't use Wikipedia for our research project. I'm telling you, don't use it. It cannot show up in your research page because anybody can go on Wikipedia and change it. There is good information if you can find the citation. It can lead you to really good sources, but don't take your information from Wikipedia. So we get lots of different things like that. But if you have ever heard of Google Scholar, Google Scholar is a search engine that takes you direct, oops, that's not the right one. Google Scholar. There we go. So if you go to scholar.google.com, then you're looking directly at academic research articles. So if we search for cancer on here, it's going to take us directly to articles that have been produced by academics from different universities. It's all things that have been published in journals. So the Lancet, these are articles from 1994. It has citations already there. It's beautiful. So it gives you all of the names of the researchers, but the hard part is that it can have a lot of lingo that we don't necessarily understand. But even just reading the abstract of some of these studies can give you really great primary information. So that's a little bit on primary information and secondary information, or sources, I should say. So you can read through there. What you're going to be doing in this part of your research is you are going to be planning for what sources of secondary information are you going to use and what sources of primary information are you going to use. So you are planning ahead to say, I'm going to go and get academic sources or statistics as my primary resource. Or I'm going to go and I'm going to do an interview or a survey and I'm going to gather information that way. All are really great, but just remember, you need 2 slides of information worth of primary sources in your presentation. So moving on, you'll see that there is a little note here on my research plan. This is where you're writing in what your plan is. Where are you going to get information? So in my mycology example from the previous video that I had talked about, maybe one of the things I'm going to look at in here is a guide to Manitoba mushrooms, Manitoba native mushrooms. Maybe another one I'm going to look at is I'm going to read a book on mycology, an intro mycology textbook, or maybe I'm going to go and I'm going to watch a documentary film. In fact, a really good one that I just watched is called Fantastic Fungi. And it's really, really interesting. Maybe that's going to be one of my sources. So this is where you're going and searching through. You're not taking notes yet. You're just skimming through different articles to see, is this a legit website? Does it give me information that I can use in my product or in my final product? And is it current? Is it up to date? Does it make sense? Is there bias present in it? So you want to make sure you're really thinking about, is this a good source or not? So the other thing that I wanted to touch on, you can go through here and you'll need to fill this out. Before we get to the proposal, the other thing I wanted to touch on was 2 types of primary sources. So there is data that is qualitative, which tells you about the quality of something. Qualitative. It deals with descriptions, colors, textures. The information is interpreted, right? So if I'm giving you qualitative information about my cat, I'm going to give you information like my cat is orange and it is fluffy and things like that. I am also going to examine quantitative data. So quantitative data deals with numbers. It can be measured. So if I'm giving you qualitative data about my cat, I might give you how tall it is, how heavy it is, how long its claws are, things like that. So you can go through this handout. It gives you different examples, and then you can kind of apply it to a classroom setting. What would be quantitative data about a classroom setting? What might be qualitative data about a classroom setting? So it's really important that you gather information that covers both qualitative and quantitative data. So the final piece of this lesson is you need to write what we call a proposal. This is you creating a schedule that you need to stick by for this project. So it does reference using Pages in Writers Inc., which I can get you if you do need, but you don't actually have to use that if you need a little extra help. So this gives you an example. You need to be able to fill this in with the date, who this is for. It's for me, who it's from, what your subject, your topic is. Describe your your project. What are you doing for a topic? What are you covering? And then you're going to outline this with the date, the due date of different stages of the inquiry process. So you're going to outline it right from stage one, which you are hopefully already done, and then what you did, your activity. And so there's going to be probably multiple entries for stage 2 and stage 3, where you are looking at gathering qualitative or quantitative data. And one day maybe you're going to work on primary data gathering or primary sources, and another day you're going to work on, probably multiple days, you're going to work on secondary sources. So it gives you another example if you need an example of that, one that some previous staff has thrown together as a great example. So you'll notice that stage 3 is covered a lot in here, and then we skip to 4 and 5 where those are processed. So how I tend to work with research is I will gather all of one topic. So let's say for mycology, I'm gathering all my information, stage 2 and 3 of characteristics and traits of fungi. So I might go and do that, gather all that information, and then I'm going to process it. And then I might, once I've got it processed, then I'm going to record that on my PowerPoint, complete those pieces of my PowerPoint. That's what's happening here. All the information's gathered during 3, and then 4 and 5, we're plugging it in to that part of the PowerPoint. Then we go back to stage 3 again. We're gathering that information, gathering those sections of research, and then we're plugging them into our PowerPoint. The last stage, stage 6, is where you actually record your presentation. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of information as to how to proceed. And if you have any questions, by all means, don't hesitate to contact me. Good luck.